Welcome, everyone. I'm Tyler Woods. I'm reading Days of Ragnarok. We are on page 323. This is the beginning of the chapter called RECON. This is Chris's account of their expedition. At daybreak, the RECON team forms up, making ready last details of vehicles and provisions. As much as Jason wants to join us, Anna is too close to having their baby for him to be away. Our team consists of Sam Elliott, Randy Fowler, John Stubbs, and me, Chris Spencer. Randy leads our team, with me as second in command. It suits us all, and Randy has a good head. Jason gives me the 308 and the M79 he brought from Intrepid. They're good to have, and I believe it provides him a sense of being part of the team, even though he can't be with us. Fred Livingston gives final instructions. You guys are as prepared for this trip as you can be, but there's a lot we don't know. Be careful and stick to the plan. Keep the artillery out of sight, but always ready. We don't expect any remaining hostility, but be alert for the unexpected anyway. You have a list of priority items to bring back with you and things to note on the map for collection later. Again, be careful, and may God bless this trip. We'll be praying for you until you return. Pat Wagner offers some communication updates. We were able to mount a multiband HF radio in the truck. Keep the whip tied down like it is because it will transmit better that way. Stick to the timetables and frequencies we trained on and be prompt with your check-ins, as we'll all be nervous wrecks waiting for each one. We'll probably only have reliable NVIS reception for 3/4 of the trip. When that fails, loose the whip and try regular HF. I'll repeat Fred's advice, be careful, and may God bless. Alan Duncan offers a prayer, and all heads bow. Heavenly Father, please bless this trip, and may your angels protect our men as they seek your will and our future home. Guide them by your providence and shield them with your grace. Amen. All the group is there to wish our team well, but Stephanie Sweeney gives Sam incentive to be safe and return home soon by planning a big kiss on him for all to see. Sam's expression is startled, but it's instantly replaced by a huge grin, and I think I detect his chest sticking out a bit more. Becky and Gina likewise give me hugs and kisses. I tell Becky this won't be dangerous. We're being careful and we'll be back on schedule. I tell Gina, be good for mommy and I'll see you soon. We have the OSI truck that Alan originally drove from Houston, and we have Travis's trailer on loan. The 2-seat Ranger is loaded in the trailer along with 3 barrels of diesel, thanks to Jim bringing it over the past few months. All our food, clothing, and supplies are in the bed of the truck behind the 2 barrels of drinking water. We look ready to go, but none of us are ready to say goodbye. As the team nearly pulls out, Travis and his sons drive up. Travis gets out and walks up. After handshakes, Travis gives some advice. I'm glad we made it in time. You boys be careful. Don't let yourself get lazy. Practice safe crossing at every overpass, bridge, and choke point. It's boring, tedious, and slow, but it'll get you home. Remember, avoidance is twice better than successful engagement. As Randy starts the truck and pulls out, every eye is on us, and some of them filled with tears. Nikki steps close to Stephanie while Christy draws close to Becky and Gina. Christy says to Becky, they'll be back in only a week, but that week will be very long for some, won't it? Becky looks up, and with Gina in her arms, her eyes are wet with tears. Becky, why not help us in the kitchen this week? Gina can play in the dining area, and she'll be easy to watch there. She could also play with Amber and Haley Isham on some days. Keeping busy with Stephanie and me will help the time go by. I think I'd like that, says Becky. This feels the same as when Chris deployed. It's never a good feeling. We plan to take 385 north to 90 west, then cross over to 67 north. It avoids most population centers and offers few choke points. Our speed climbs to 40 miles an hour, and stays there as we remember Travis's training. Faster will cause you to miss something, and it's what you miss that may not miss you. Travel is with windows open and every eye scanning the road ahead. Mile after mile passes without so much as an overpass until marathon. Every few miles are abandoned vehicles. Stopping takes time to glass the area with binoculars, paying special attention to the presence or lack of footprints. Footprints indicate fresh activity and perhaps trouble. No signs are found, but each site has to be checked. Outside town, our truck comes to a stop. Let's unload the Ranger and take a stretch break, says Randy. Marathon isn't on our scavenge list. We'll have to work the ranch roads to get around it. No telling what we'll find. Chris, would you take lead with Sam driving? I'll take rear guard with John at the wheel. Is everybody good with that? All nod agreement, and the Ranger is unloaded. The ranch roads are vacant and uneventful, but worse is the 10 to 15 mile an hour speed. More care must be given to dirt roads, and then there's all the dust that's raised. Reaching Highway 90 was supposed to be a relief, but it is choked with abandoned vehicles. I put my fist in the air, signaling all stop. Get out and walk back to the truck. This is a no-go. How far does the map say this service road goes? Randy checks the trucker's atlas and that Lucas had at Terlingua's store. It looks better, several points of access to 90, and it follows the rail tracks all the way past 67 North. It could be choked, and it could be set up for an ambush, but it doesn't look like we have much choice. Slow and careful rules the day, I say. This is getting way too interesting. I hate interesting. Weaving through abandoned cars and trucks on the service road is challenging, but the highway is a death zone. Cars and trucks are everywhere, and some have been burned out. Windows are broken. Then, bodies, or what's left of them. John sees them first. Do you see that? There's half a man over there. The top skeletal trunk of a man's body is half pulled from the open door of a car. The seatbelt is still attached from his neck to his waist, but there are no legs. What happened? Scavengers, Randy answers. Coyotes, most likely. He could have died by most anything, from heat stroke to heart attack. From the looks of things, some of these people may have turned on each other. It looks like a scene from a Halloween set. Few recognizable bodies are left, but there are plenty of skeletal pieces torn by animals. The service road isn't vacant, but it's passable. I signal all stop again and inch up on a truck to the side of the road. After looking inside, all I can do is kick the door and walk back to the truck. That could have been me and Becky. There's a man, a woman, and a baby inside, with the doors locked. Looks like they ran out of fuel, pulled off the road, and just died there. I'm pretty shaken up by what I saw in the truck, so we sit there a bit and drink some water. Nothing prepares you for this. Nothing. It's been slow, but we make it just short of a small town with a population barely under 10,000. It's just inside New Mexico. This town meets our requirements for scavenging. The population size is high enough to employ a city water and sewer system, and it has less than a 2% rural population. Being in the Rocky Desert, there are no suburbs or rural homes. Basically, this town is not habitable without power, but it is small enough to have avoided the riots that destroy larger towns quickly. Those with means have left for better ground, and those who remain didn't last long enough to ransack the city. We'll spend some time scavenging in the morning. No nighttime fire is the rule. Any warm food will have to be heated tomorrow. The Ranger and truck are parked to block the wind, and shifts are taken so each man gets at least a 6-hour sleep. Sitting in the near dark after sunset, the others want to hear about my deployments with the Army. What we saw today brought back a lot of bad memories. Afghan civilians who waited too long to evacuate would have to pass right through incoming Taliban soldiers. Those animals would rape and plunder whatever caught their eye and kill anyone who resisted. They weren't soldiers. Soldiers fight for a cause. Taliban are just filth, and it doesn't take a soldier long to get over killing them. It must have been really bad, says Sam. It leaves a mark, I say. Most Afghans don't know what they believe. They are just told they're Muslims because they live in a Muslim country and that's their culture. Underneath, they're just plain people. Then there's the hater, brainwashed from the cradle to think the world is out to get them, and they will be rewarded for killing and hating back. Those are the filth. You won't get into their head because they've bought into the lies. I used to think it was a Muslim thing, but the same ideology has grown among inner city blacks. Then I thought it was just the Muslims and the blacks, but it's been growing in the Hispanics too. So I thought it was a minority problem, and then the same attitude is among the gays, white supremacist groups, liberal politics. It isn't the who, it's the what. And the what is hate. Hate knows no skin color or ethnic boundary. My fight is that I hate the hate so much that it blurs the difference between the person and the hate that drives them. It's easy to become what you're fighting against. That's what Alan was saying a few weeks back, says Randy. He made the point that when God said, "Vengeance is mine," it was because we aren't capable of dishing out without getting it all over us. God said, "I will repay," because evil can't spoil perfect holiness. I've seen it. Good kids raised right, then their soul is destroyed in war, I say. They call it post-traumatic stress disorder, but I see it as just a conflicted soul. I think it's the vengeance that does it. Until I got a grip on the purpose of God's wrath and God's personal forgiveness of the hate that started growing in me, I was headed for death by combat. Some of those kids couldn't go back home, so they'd stay another tour. They got bolder, took unnecessary risks, and in time, they went home in a box with a medal awarded to their family. There's no time during deployment to think about why you fight. Everybody fights for the guy next to them. And you do what you have to stay alive. It's after you get home that the ghosts come out. You aren't sleeping in the cot next to the guy you fight for, or who fights for you. At home, you're all alone with your soul and continually in review of every single thing you did. It's a trial by one, and it never ends. If you can't make it to God's judgment seat and find complete forgiveness, Satan doesn't have to come for you. You'll deliver yourself to his will. I quit my personal quest for justice. I couldn't kill every Taliban or even make enough of a mark to matter. What I look for today are the ones who can be delivered from the hate. If I can reach some before the hate starts, they can be sealed from its effect. I'm still a soldier who can send around where it needs to go, but it's not personal anymore. Sam, Randy, and John have a lot to ponder while standing guard or trying to sleep. Morning comes too soon. Sam digs a Dakota hole for the small fire that heats a pot of cowboy coffee, a precious gift from the last of Becky's stash. We've made good time, but avoiding Odessa took most of our evening. Today, we should make our way out of Texas. Picking. Randy gives the morning briefing. We're going to what Travis describes as a death zone. We'll probably see some disgusting things, but data on this isolated town says there should be no survivors. Rural population is less than 2% with no surface water and no dry farming. Those who lived here depended exclusively on grid power for water and sewer. Being a small town, they probably didn't riot when the economy failed, but when the power died, they only had a short time to get out. It's been over 6 months since then, and we don't expect bad smells, but don't open any walk-in boxes or refrigeration units. We're skipping food stores, liquor stores, gun stores, and jewelry stores. Those will have to be cleaned out first, or those will have been cleaned out first. You have the list of priority items, but keep an eye out for quality, warm clothing, undergarments, and work boots. The collapse started in July, so it's not likely they were thinking about winter temperatures back then. If you see a pool and spa supply, look for alum-based water clarifier without algicide, and Super Shock with chlorine being the only active ingredient. Another high-value item is salt. We stick together and don't plan on being here more than a few hours. Any questions? Good, let's go. On the way to the shopping district, Sam spots a pool supply store. It's small, but yields a 100-pound bucket of trichloryl S-triazine, triazanine trione. I can't pronounce that stuff, and I know what it is. Randy says, this counts for a win if we don't find anything else. Quarter teaspoon will treat a barrel of water. It appears most people did leave town early, but older cars are abandoned next to lines of all sorts of vehicles piled up at fuel stations. I wouldn't count on any fuel in those tanks, says Chris. The station tanks must have been pumped dry or these wouldn't be here. Convenience stores at these stations are cleaned out. Not even a can of beans is left on the shelves. The town is eerie quiet, with storefront doors wide open. Some windows are broken, but for the most part, the town is intact with only certain stores stripped bare. It isn't like Highway 90. We aren't finding bodies. They must be here, but there are no bodies on the street, and there's no sign of scavengers having carted them away. No bloodstains either. Looting obviously happened, but there's no sign of chaos and violence. Pulling into the shopping district provides a different story. There are some bodies, or what's left of them, and a few broken windows next to the locked doors. As expected, the shelves of jewelry stores, gun shops, and sporting goods stores stand as a testament to greed and foolish priorities. Most of the scattered bones and bloodied clothing are next to those stores. In a Western boot store, shoes and boots are piled highest in the athletic shoe and dress shoe aisles, but much less in the work boot area. Good work boots replace old shoes on each team member, and about a dozen pair come with us for individuals with worn-out shoes back in Terlingua. Most of the clothing is on the floor, but a few Carhartt jackets make our cash. A big hardware store is just too messed up to spend time sifting through aisles. A smaller hardware and garden store yields a few good shovels, hoes, and tools. Their quality is better than what comes in the big box stores anyway. After a few hours of targeted scrounging, the trailer now holds several pair of good work boots, dry chlorine powder, a 50-pound bag of salt, an assortment of light jackets, and some underclothing and tools. Winter clothing wasn't on the racks when these stores closed, but work gloves will do. Okay, guys, announces Randy. Daylight is burning. We need to put some miles under us. I think we've done all right for this trip. Is the map marked with this place? We might make a return shopping trip in the future. Got it, says Sam. I have to say, the stores are a bit messy, but the self-service aisles are great. A mile out of town, the Ranger is put back on the trailer and Kansas looms ahead. After seeing the chaos on the state highway outside of Marathon, Sam suggests taking extra measure to avoid anything larger than a small village. Several hours go by without incident or town that can't be bypassed. In this country, the highways bypass the towns, and unless you take an access road, you can keep on your way. Approaching a place where two roads cross, John points forward and says, "Full stop." Ahead is what appears to be a roadblock made of two rows of vehicles stationed across the highway. It's right at a dry creek crossing. Glassing the situation carefully, I hand the binoculars to Randy and say, "Have a look. I don't see activity, but that was built on purpose. Someone intends to stop traffic. Can we get around it?" Sam is already surveying the map. Not without a huge delay. That dry creek bed runs a long way. The Ranger might make it through, but not the truck, and certainly not with the trailer. It looks old, says Randy. Maybe it can be pushed out of the way. There's not much choice but to recon this thing and safe it if we can, I suggest. John, you want to go for a drive? Ready. John and Sam are dismounting the Ranger as I turn to Randy. Randy, who's the better shot, you or Sam? I'm not bad, but Sam hunts more, and I think he's a better shot. Tactical command is my job, and fully supported by Randy, Sam, and John. Randy, you and Sam drive to about 100 yards and glass the heck out of it. Look for any footprints in the dirt or dust Look for wiped off fenders or door frames where anything may have put their hand. If you see anything out of place, wave me off. I'll do the same from the far side. If it still looks old, I'll get closer after dragging the other side for wire. Sam, you keep the 308 on those car windows. If you see any activity, have Randy wave us off, but keep your crosshairs on target. Randy comments, Chris, I'm glad you're along. You've already covered things I would have missed. Experience is a big help right now, thanks. It's okay, I say, just keep your eyes open. John and I will have sidearms with the M79 as backup, but let's hope we don't need it. These leave such awful potholes. John drives the Ranger off-road and toward the dry creek bed, looking for a spot to cross. About 200 feet east of the road, he begins his traverse. Randy is already creeping toward the road, while Sam glasses each car and the ground around them. The Ranger makes it over the creek bed easily and begins weaving slowly toward the cars. I look over to Randy, several times not wanting to miss a wave off. Randy and Sam are in position. Sam is now glassing the cars with the 308 and Randy has binoculars. Still nothing. John stops the Ranger as I take out a newly acquired garden hoe from the back. I begin dragging the hoe on its edge, making a narrow but deep furrow in an arc shape around the cars. What's he doing? Asks Sam. Trolling for wire, answers Randy. He's checking for an IED, I think. Completing my furrow to the edge of the road, I cross and begin again on the far side. At Randy's 11 o'clock position, I stop cold. Slowly, I lift the hoe, and there is a field wire caught on the back of the blade, signaling both Randy and John to back up as I begin unearthing the wire and following it west. Pistol drawn, in about another 100 feet, I stop again at a large growth of brush. I signal Randy and Sam to walk west and provide cover from the creek bed, and for John to do the same from the roadway just north of my position. As each get in place to provide covering fire, I slowly drop to the ground and begin creeping on my belly around the brush. The wire runs to the end of a pipe sticking out of a short concrete wall. The bunker. Randy, do you see that? Behind the brush, says Sam. You'd never see it from the road. What is it? Looks like a transformer bunker, Randy answers. Like in housing areas that have underground service. What is something like that doing out here in the middle of nowhere? The low structure only rises a foot to 18 inches off the ground, but the dirt gradually mounds to this place, making it a vantage point that looks natural, but it isn't natural. I move to the northwest corner and slowly move my hoe toward what appears to be a latch on the lid. With the latch released, I again use the hoe to raise the hatch, while keeping my belly to the ground, slowly peering inside, shading my eyes with my hands. I can only see the top of a ladder and blackness beyond. I return to the Ranger. I can't see anything but the top of a ladder and what looks like a small window facing the road. I need a light. Let's get back to the truck. At the truck, Sam locates a small flashlight as I form a fresh plan. It looks like the cars are rigged, but it doesn't look like there's anyone to blow it, or they would have by now. There's a hide behind that brush, but no footprints, and no sign that any have been brushed out. Randy, you return to where you and Sam were. Sam, you cover the hatch from about 20 yards back and off to the side. John, you cover the same from the north. I'll look inside. With everyone in position, I move close to where I was and toss a rock into the hatch. The sound of the echo seems to indicate a larger room with a hard floor, but there's no response from inside. Attaching the light to the blade of the garden hoe by its pocket clip, I slowly move the light over the hole and barely look inside to a dimly lit room below. With more confidence, I lower the light and turn it to survey the small room. Come closer, Chris says. He's dead. With flashlight in hand, I climb down the hole. At the bottom of a 7-foot ladder is a room with a small window facing the roadblock. The remains of a man are piled up on the floor. Lying next to the bones and clothing is a rusted automatic pistol with the hammer still cocked. I release the magazine and force the slide back to remove a round from the chamber before setting the pistol back down. Looks like suicide, I comment. There's a hole the size of a baseball in the top of his skull and old blood splatter on the ceiling. Don't come down till I find where that wire goes. The pipe stops just inside the room with about 6 feet of wire hanging loosely from it. On the floor sits a gel cell battery like would be used on a small motorcycle. I move the battery to the other side of the room. The back of the room is covered with a dark pleated curtain, and as my body disturbs the air by moving the battery, the center of the curtain moves back further than the sides do. Keeping to the side and using the hoe to examine behind the curtain, I discover a doorway directly behind the ladder. Almost missing it in the dim light, there's an AR-15 leaning against the corner at the far side. Protected by the curtain, it looks in fair shape and is definitely loaded. Removing its full magazine and checking that the chamber is empty, I lean it against the front wall and pull the curtain fully back, exposing a doorway. You guys got to see this. Come on down. But one of you stay up there and cover. Randy and John come slowly down the ladder and wait at the bottom for their eyes to adjust to the dim light. Shining light through the doorway behind the ladder exposes a nearly 8-foot wide passage leading back approximately 20 feet into the dirt mound behind the hatch. Looks like a bunker, says Randy. Be careful, be real careful, I caution. If this guy had the road rigged, there's no telling what he's done down here. Don't touch without looking from all angles. Inside the doorway and to the right, there's a light switch. Following the wires down from the switch box, they end at a bank of batteries on the lowest level of the row of shelves on this side of the corridor. The other side of the switch runs up to what looks like an RV light fixtures on the ceiling. Make sure they go nowhere else. I break the plastic switch cover and examine the switch wiring. Satisfied that there are no hidden wires, I close the switch and the room lights up. Shelves line each wall along the short corridor. On the shelves are cases of MRE, meals, cases of military ammunition, several loaded rifle magazines, dozens of sealed 5-gallon pails labeled with food descriptions, ham radio equipment, 2 expedition-sized water filtration systems, and 2 backup pump water filters. Some of the equipment has been damaged by rodents, but there are enough supplies to last someone a very long time. Can you believe all this stuff? Asked John. Yep, Randy comments. This was a prepper's lair. Looks like it's just for one, I say. I think we've found a lone wolf's cave. What's a lone wolf? John asks. A lone wolf is a prepper who thinks he can hide out and fight off any who may attempt to take whatever he has. Most of their stuff is military, and they have a combat mentality. Every problem has a tactical answer, and obstacles are generally met with force. This poor guy probably spent years making and provisioning this hide. I'm guessing he came here at the first hint of trouble and eventually lost his mind waiting for a fight that never came. I doubt anyone ever knew he was here. All dressed up and nowhere to go, added Randy. The end of the passage meets the middle of what appears to be another Connex box. Flashlight sits on the end of the right-hand shelf. Handing it to Randy offers him better lighting. Against the wall to the left of the second Connex box is a single cot with a large backpack hanging on the wall, loaded and ready to go. Looks like he was getting ready to go somewhere, says John. Probably his bug-out bag, I reply. It's typical to keep a fully loaded backpack in the event there are only seconds to escape an overwhelming force. Not a bad idea, but where could he run out here? On a small table next to the cot sits a multi-powered shortwave radio with a wire twisted around the antenna and running up through the small hole in the wall near the ceiling. Using the butt end of the hoe to strike the metal wall of the Connex box, the resulting noise is a dull thud. This guy really put some work into this. I think the outside of this bunker is shelled in concrete to keep the walls from caving in. They aren't meant to be buried like this without support. Over the bed is a small shelf of books that says a lot about the man who hid here. Every book relates to survival technique and combat tactics. Everything is about how not to die, but nothing about making a life worth living. I check the bookshelf from below and behind before removing a military training manual. The cover reads, Recondo 1970 Recon Team Manual. I studied this in the Army. As I open the book, a pin with a ring attached falls out on the bed. Smirking, I added, Rambo even used a grenade pin for a bookmark. I bet he felt macho. I announced, I'm going to check out the roadblock and see what this guy planted on the other end. Once we get to the truck to this side, we can start loading all this in the trailer. I'll bet Sam is wondering what's become of us by now. You can start moving things topside, but before you move anything, look for wires or anything suspicious. Look good and from several angles. I climb out and call to Sam. It's a bunker. There are supplies down here. I'm going to check out the roadblock and see if we can put these cars out of the way or pull these cars out of the way. Sam acknowledges and heads to the truck to move it closer. Following the wire back to the road, I find it surfaces where the tire of the first car almost perfectly conceals it. Wire is tucked up under the cars and passed through a small drain hole in the trunk of the middle car of the first row. The cars are situated so that the engine of one car is parallel to the trunk of another. This roadblock was well designed, and an explosion from the trunk of the car in the first row would be directed by the mass of the car behind it. Thinking to myself, this guy was shrewd. He knew what he was doing. The truck with the wire is locked, but the car has a mechanical release that's activated by a lever on the floor next to the driver's door. Getting a pair of wire cutters from the trunk, I talk with Sam. Sam, it'd be best to pull the truck back a few hundred feet until I get this trunk open and defused. There's no telling what this guy did, but he was plenty smart. Cutting the two strands of field wire, one wire at a time to avoid making contact between the pairs, and pulling wire from the bunker, I made a loop at the end and pulled it over the trunk release and put it over the trunk release handle, then out the driver's window and back to the side of the road as far away as the wire will let me. From the ground, I pull the wire, almost expecting detonation. There is none. The truck lid pops about 6 inches up and stops. The flashlight allows me to see the wire come through the drain hole in the trunk where it connects to one lead of a blasting cap that's stuck in the end of a single stick of dynamite. The other end of the blasting cap is not connected, and the second field wire end is also hanging in the air. Raising the trunk lid exposes a 20-pound propane cylinder sitting next to the already defused dynamite. I carefully inspect and remove the propane cylinder, cut the single connected lead and the blasting cap, and use the wire cutters to very slowly slide the cap out of the dynamite. After placing the cap in the culvert beneath the road, I signal Sam to bring up the truck. Sam sees the whole thing through binoculars and says, that could have worked out badly. You're telling me, I say, the guy must have been prepared for everything except wire connectors. One lead came loose from the detonator cap. It never would have blown had he tried it. He's dead in his bunker and never got to live out what he made ready for. Blew his brains right out the top of his head. I need a break. Exhausted from the tension, I exclaim, I'm getting too old for this. Sam looks up to see Randy and John coming from the bunker and says, we'll start making a hole in this barricade. You take a rest. John arrives first and looks shaken. Chris, we found something that isn't right. If it's what I think it is, it's really not right. Randy is now caught up. You have some good advice, Chris. We didn't find any wires, but when I started to move one of the pails, something was behind it. From the side, I could barely see what looks like a hand grenade between the pails. We didn't move anything else. Oh, crap, I say. I should have known. The guy has a loose pin in his book, and I missed it. I'm really sorry, guys. My carelessness might have gotten you killed. Chris, you have You gave us good warning, and that's what saved our butts, replied Randy. Don't be hard on yourself. It's not worth getting blown up for any of that stuff. But we can't leave it for someone else to find and get blown up either, I say. Let's move these cars first and then see what we have down there. And we'll pick up from here tomorrow.